Welcome everyone to this episode of The Latest Thread. Well, sometimes we struggle a little bit with the topic, so we try to think of something that maybe we haven't done before or we haven't done in a while. So on today's episode, a block was chosen and each one of us drew a design or several designs, to fill the block. And we tried to keep it fairly simple so anyone can hopefully do that. And there will also be a printable for this. And that way you guys can, do your own. So Sharon, are you going to share your screen?
I will share super quick here. And how is that? Can you guys see it all?
Perfect.
Great. Okay.
So this is the ladder block, and I grabbed that from EQ.
All right. Hang on a second. Here we are.
Oh, I'm first. Wow.
Okay. Welcome.
Never first. So I just wanted to keep it simple, and I just did straight lines coming into the blocks and then did just little crissy crosses. I don't know what you would even call them. It's just like a 1/4-inch echo, but each corner crosses over itself. So super simple, but it did what it needed to do.
And that would be, you probably quilt that continuously, I would imagine.
It was mostly continuous. I have to, you have to cut through the ditch a couple times, but yeah.
Cute.
Yeah.
Nice.
That one's mine. And I knew I wanted straight lines, and so I decided you already have those points in there from the little squares, and you can just work your way back and forth, kind of like, over to one side and back and over and back and over, and then snuck through all of that to add I did pebbles, but you could put any kind of fill in there. Keeping it simple.
It almost looks like an optical illusion, even though they're straight lines, the way they connect, gives a little bit of a rounded effect at times.
And even because that block's a little askew, not askew, what's the word? Asymmetrical. So it even pulls that eye even more to that corner.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, if you had if you have a quilt that was just a bunch of those blocks, you could like flip them, you know what I mean? If you put all the white corners together, coming out, or
so this is a great way, the way you did it, where it's simple but super effective. As you said, with several blocks you get secondary designs as well.
Well, I think this one would be really cool if you put it on point. Right? I always find like if I don't like a block, if I put it on point, it fixes it.
Yeah.
Now I like it.
I tolerate it better. Maybe not like it, but
I'm not saying I don't like this, but I'm just saying like this one would really look cool on point. It would make a really cool effect across the quilt.
Okay. So this one is mine. And I thought, just by doing continuous curve, but adding another section. So I made mine symmetrical. You were talking about it being non-symmetrical. I chose to do mine symmetrical, and then added the frames to go around so it looks like they're coming out underneath. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but I chose that color purposefully because, that way you can see that the effect, I think. But still simple. You can use any type of continuous curve. You can use a much simpler one if you want to make it more simple. But again, you can do most of it all at once.
I like it looks like layers because the little frame things coming from underneath.
Well, I was thinking about you, and that's when I thought, Jody always talks about layers, and it's so effective. And this worked well here.
the little point-to-point design looks like kind of like a wrought iron gate or something, like a detail in something fancy like that. Okay.
Does, but still simple to execute once you get going on it. That's
Yep.
really nice. And that's mine. And I like flowers. And this worked well because you can jump from the corner into that middle because you got that point already there from the piecing, and then do your little flower and jump back out, do the little square section, and then back to the corner. So it could be all continuous. And I think also if there were several of them and all the whites were put together, just like you were saying previously, you could even do a different type of flower in every one, and you'd have a whole little bouquet in the middle.
That'd be
Very
pretty.
cool.
I think this is really cute, and it also brings up a point, I think, in regards to you have to look at what fabric, you're working with. So even if you have just something tone on tone with leaves or other flower prints, then that's a great way of, making it cohesive with the fabrics. But either way, it's super cute. I love it.
It is. And this one is mine. I started with a feather and just drew a double spine in there and put a feather on either side. And I liked the point to point in the kind of channel of those squares there. And I must have doodled for about half an hour trying to figure out what to put in the opposite side, and then I just decided to draw out a little grid that followed the squares in that diagonal row. And once my grid was drawn, then I just continued on with the continuous curve design, point to point, and then I just erased my grid lines. And I mean, those grid lines are something that you could keep in if you wanted to stitch in the ditch of those little squares in that diagonal channel. Then you might want to have that line continuing through down into the bottom teal space. But, it's just a nice option to have if you don't want to go through something and stitch in the ditch everywhere. So
It's always
Really
great
pretty.
too when you can mark by using like the piecing, you know what I mean? So you could just go from that point over to the edge and makes the grid without having to really measure or think too much.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Very pretty.
Very pretty.
Okay, this one is mine, and it's probably not as simple as the other ones. I did the continuous curve in the middle just because I love that. I put the feather in the negative space, and then straight lines, piano keys, I guess you would say, in the blue section. What I liked about it, and I actually kind of put a couple things together. I don't know if you'll be able to see them, but depending on how you turn the block, how everything kind of comes together. So all those straight lines come together. Can you see that?
Yeah.
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 And the same thing with the feathers. If you turn it the other way, then it makes this like really nice kind of feather bouquet. So for me, that was just kind of fun because I was able to get alternate designs out of the initial design.
Mm-hmm.
And you could honestly take any of these designs and
And do the
take
same thing with it.
something that is on the large white side, and then take something else from somebody else's design that is down in the bottom corner and mix and match them.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it just shows how many options there are depending on which direction you want to go, either more elegant or more nondescript, simple or more dense. I mean, that's the cool thing, that when we play with some of those blocks, how many different, versions we can come up with.
It's all about making it yours, I think, right?
Yeah, like even this one and probably most of them, they all had areas. Like on this one, if you really needed, tons of quilting on there, you could easily fill around the feathers in the white, or you could do every other piano key or something and,
Right.
change it
Right.
even more.
Yeah. They're just starting off points. Yeah.
Mhm.
Speaking of
Just to mention too, if you don't have, access to EQ. There's all kinds of quilt blocks in Google Images that are free as well. So it's just fun, especially if you're maybe either starting out and need practice to see what you can do, or if you've been quilting for a long time and you feel like you're always doing the same thing, then that again, gets you back to being more creative.
Mhm.
I also think it's cool to actually draw this up because I know when I first started, one of the things that I would struggle with is I'd put the quilt on the frame and then it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to quilt it? And by drawing it out or even just a portion of the block out, it kind of gave me a map or a direction in which to travel. And so I kind of had an idea of where I was going with it. And sometimes the quilt might take you in a different direction, but at least I kind of had a start and stop point with it and was able to kind of play around with that before I actually put a stitch into the quilt.
Yeah, and seeing these different variations from all of us, from each of us, we're all different quilters, right? We all have a little bit different styles and inspirations, and there is really no wrong way to do something, right?
No.
Like you look at the 6 or the 5 different blocks, and it's like, well, there's several different ways to do the exact same block, and they all look good. So
Right.
I think it probably takes a little bit of pressure off of hopefully you that's watching, that nothing has to be 100% perfect. It doesn't have to be this is the right way to quilt this block. There isn't. I mean, if you like it and it makes you happy and it looks pretty to you, then
Well, and you get inspiration from, I know, like just seeing the other blocks that everybody else did gives me inspiration, for, oh my gosh, I wish I'd have thought of that, like, duh, I could have had a V8. But some of them are just so beautiful, and I never would have thought of going in that direction. But when you see that, it opens up alternative avenues for you, and allows your mind to go in places that maybe it wouldn't have gone in the first place.
Okay. So on the screen, you see the printable that I was talking about earlier. And you'll have access to that. Right, Sharon?
I believe so. I'm not the one to do it, but
Karen? My Kitty?
but
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Yeah. There should be a way to access it from the description on this. Yes.
Okay. Well,
Description on the video. Perfect.
well, thank you so much.
Well, it was fun.
Anybody else want to add anything? If not, then thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.